Chad, how are you doing, man?
Good. How you doing, Josh?
Good, good, good. Hey, good to have you on. Started doing these podcasts yesterday, and I'm excited to have you on. Obviously, you and I went through the crash together. So, to
Uh-huh.
give everybody a quick background of how I know you, Chad helped me buy my first house that I moved into in Utah. I think it was 2002-ish. And I remember him talking a little bit when I bought that house about the dot-com bubble and just a little blip in the market before it recovered. And I bought right on the upside of that, made a ton of equity in that first house that I bought owner occupied. But Chad also helped me with my first and then numerous flip properties after that. I didn't have any education when I first got into this. And so he helped me find 3815 Norden. And as an uneducated person that didn't have a clue what I was doing in real estate, just came from financial planning, I'm lucky to have found an agent that knew what he was talking about, because now after I got into this business, I could have gone the other direction and really got screwed. So Chad's helped me. And then we've wound up partnering on a lot of deals, went through the market crash together, and we both kind of crashed and burned at the same time. And then I've stayed good friends in contact with Chad, and he's still a real estate agent. We just bought a house that was his aunts through
Uh,
marriage.
yep. And through marriage.
Yeah, so I still buying houses and still investing in real estate with Chad. So that's my background to how I knew Chad. Chad, what are you doing now?
So background right now, currently selling residential real estate is my primary source of income. I do hard money lending um, and just other adventures along that line. But my day-to-day work is primary residential real estate, hard money lending, um, and so forth. So
And you're lending your actual money, correct? I mean, you're not.
yeah, I'm lending my own my own funds. Um,
For those of
just
you
like
that don't know, it's so much nicer to go direct to somebody that's lending their money, because when they say yes, they mean yes, instead of saying yes and then getting the powers that be that change their
yeah,
mind or change the terms. So, and the other interesting part to me, obviously, that is 10 years ago, we both crashed and burned, and now you've built yourself back up to where you have the liquidity to be able to lend your own money and make money that way. And that's part of why I wanted to have you on, is because you went through a lot. And talking to you, I've talked to you a lot about this and
yeah.
through it. We both went through a lot of the emotional, catastrophic dive when that market fell out. Kind of tell me about. I'll lead into it with my experience. 2007, flipping houses, phones ringing off the hook, businesses rolling, and then all of a sudden it seemed like one day my phone stopped ringing, and it was always making excuses in my head where it's a weekend,
Mhm.
things are slow, it's this holiday. And then one day led into three, led into five, led into 2 weeks, led into months. And I know that I think that you were going to finance a house or something, and your bank cut off your home equity line of credit or something like that. It was one of the first events.
Yeah, it was strange times. I remember going through those times as a real estate agent, thinking. I remember at one point, kind of several thoughts that I had through this. Is like, at one point I couldn't even. I remember thinking to myself that I couldn't remember a time that somebody didn't get qualified for a loan, and it was really strange. I mean, that's kind of part of the buying and selling process as an agent. You meet with them, you take them to your mortgage officer, or you get them qualified, and then all of a sudden you turn around and sometimes people don't qualify for one reason or the other. I remember thinking during that period of time once that I can't tell you the last time I haven't had anybody qualified. During that period of time, it was also kind of strange where you'd meet with a client, and if they were buying a $500,000 home, it was everything that they could do to try and make it 600,000. And financing was, everything was just, you know, it was just like, this is never going to end. And it just kind of kept going and producing up and up and up and up. And then I remember just talking to mortgage officers that would be like, oh, this bank closed. And then the next day, oh, this bank closed. And it was just, that's just what you heard in the news. And yet my business just kept kind of clicking along. And then all of a sudden it just slowly started tapering off. Really strange times. And it really does play with your psyche as you go through those processes of, my phone's ringing to now my phone's not ringing. And, sometimes in real estate at that time, a lot of us were leveraged pretty heavy. You would take a property and really expound on it, or cash out refinances or doing different things just to leverage into the next deal.
Yeah, and
So
you and I were partners on a lot of those deals. So I know that we were not just 100% leveraged. We were 106 or 108. I mean, we were trying to hear the appraiser was going in and giving you $20,000 more than you thought the home was really worth. And so you usually came out with more money than you thought you were going to refinance out. So when the market tanked, not only were we 20, 25% upside down, we were 35, 40% upside down in some of these properties. So selling them was almost impossible to sell some of those properties.
I remember
I foreclosed, short sold, and, got wiped out of a lot of mine because I couldn't sell them outside of a short sell.
Yeah, but it's a strange kind of position that you're in too. Looking back, it's just kind of like you're a deer in the headlights is kind of the best way I could describe my own self in that situation. Even though I could help and walk others through it, I had a hard time navigating it for myself as all of this was going down, and it was kind of hard to sometimes think clearly on, all right, what do I do? And try and take the emotion out of everything that was going on.
But the emotion was so heavy for me. I was in the depths of depression through a lot of that because I put a lot of my value on my houses and my cars and how much money I was making and the jobs I was giving to the people that I knew, and kind of the reputation I had as having made it, I guess you could say, in quotation marks. And that's where I put a lot of my value. So now as it was tanking, my self-worth was tanking along with my checking account, to where I just went into super deep depression. And it was hard for me to even battle out of that and really even think rationally when it came to a business decision, rather than I need $20 just to put food on my table today. It wasn't thinking about my investment for a month from now or 6 months from now. It was, how do I feed my kids today? How do I not lose my car today and put off the bank for another week so that I have wills? And it was tough for me at that point. And you've mentioned similar thoughts. What were you going through mentally at that time?
A lot of it was me beating myself up. It seems like I was very successful at a young age, and had made a lot of money, reinvested it, and then it was just kind of sad on how I lost it. I mean, there was different Ponzi schemes that I somehow found myself getting invested in, and just watching millions of dollars of group money going away. There was one individual I was tied to that, because of his financial decisions, he turned around, he knocked out a local bank here. I mean, he had swindled them for so much. He took a good chunk out of me as well. And so I had some deals go bad based on some business partners creating fraud. And that was kind of a tough one for me to swallow. There were certain transactions that I had that it wasn't such a big deal that, hey, you know what, I had a couple transactions. I remember selling a couple houses in Lehigh, and I brought $50,000 to close on a couple of them. And I was okay with it. I mean, it sucked, but it was, it wasn't the end of the world. But then I had some additional housing down there that all of a sudden my business partner took out a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth, and didn't record them and didn't tell me anything about them. And all of a sudden those got wiped out. And I think on that particular deal, I lost about $335,000, and that stung. And it wasn't the $50,000 that I lost on a couple deals. It was, how did this happen that, she took the money and ran with it, and then almost left the state with it. And just left a dozen of us just hanging. So I think my biggest frustration wasn't so much that it was tanking and that I was losing money. It was, kind of how I lost it. Some of that money was really frustrating.
Friends stealing from you.
Yeah, that hurt. That really hurt. And as you look back on it, it's like, how did this happen? I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy and in just different situations. But again, I was very similar to you with, a lot of my perception of myself, or the value of myself, was based on, the size of the checking account, and sometimes day to day, as you're idly kind of sitting by, or what am I going to do to, because it seems like expenses, the way they always work is they're always coming in. There's always something new breaking down, or on a car or a vehicle, or some other expense coming in that you weren't prepared for every month. And so it just seems like you're getting, bled out from both sides. So
and that was what a lot of it for me was stopping the bleeding. I was still making decent money, bringing in decent money, but I was bleeding faster than I could make it.
I think that's a good analogy. It was same thing. It was still making money, but it was just trying to cut the losses on everything else that was still coming, that you're responsible for. Even, if you're in a partnership and all of a sudden 2 of your 3 partners disappear and you're left holding the bag, now all of a sudden you're making bank payments or things differently there. So,
well, and now we've obviously got idle time. How are you different now than you were then? Because now, I mean, obviously financially you're better off now, so you don't have the same demons as far as that wearing on you. But part of why I wanted to talk to you is because there are people that are going to be in our positions where we were in 2008. People are going to be there coming up, and hopefully it's not to the same level. If we come out of this soon and the economy starts going, hopefully it's a blip, and I think most people can recover if May 1 we go back. But if this is June 1 or August 1 or December 1, by the time the economy starts going up, people are going to be in the same position you and I were, where they're going to be losing their cars and their houses and struggling to put food on their table. And that's a hard thing to deal with. How are you dealing with it now? What did you do then, basically, so that you didn't get sucked into that and you were able to make it through and then come out on the other end? And what are you doing now to pass that idle time so you're not just sitting
great. Yeah, great questions. So what I learned from that experience and what I've done differently in setting myself up this time is just avoiding debt. So now I turn around, if I'm in a project, I'm into it cash. Or if I'm lending money, it's all of my own money. If I'm, trying to not just be leveraged on anything. So I may not do as many projects now, but the ones that I do, I'm in a good position. Or if things did turn, I'm actually probably even in a better position with the things that I lend on. As far as an agent, I think you still just get up and work. I think through those times, looking back, I had some friends. It seems like there was kind of a shift in the industry. There were those that kind of did really good in 2004 to 2007 in those years. And it seems like those agents that did well, it kind of hurt. I mean, they may have had their income go down by 50%. A lot of them left the business, but we did have some of the others that got into the REO business that did extremely well, that they turn around and all of a sudden everybody else was starving and they were sitting, I had one friend that was doing, what did he do? Like 236 transactions, in 2010, when everybody else is just like, hey, I'm happy to do 36 transactions. And here's somebody else doing 200, I think it was like 218, 230 transactions. And so it was just, those, I think it's just in the way that you position yourself. I think in shifting the real estate market's so great. As that happens, if you can position yourself from, hey, I'm a residential real estate agent. I was heavily focused in new construction. Well, new construction may shift, and new construction went away in that period of time. But if you were to then pick up investors were a great source of income as an agent. So now if I, as an agent, hey, let me go find a really good deal. Once I had the good deal, I could turn around and sell it to investors, just like what you and I did. We did a ton of investment properties during those years. And so I think as an agent, you just kind of shift your focus of being able to position yourselves in different marketplaces based on what the economy is doing.
What do you see real estate doing coming out of this? Because it's been cranking in Utah up until this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you see Utah hurting it all through this, a small blip and then back to where you were before? You don't have a crystal ball, so nobody's going to be 100% right. So it's just a guess, but what is your educated guess on where it's going to go in Utah from here?
I think it's kind of tricky. This has kind of changed for me week by week. The very first week that this hit, it was like, oh, this is so overblown. This is, I can't even believe we're doing this, and we'll be back to work in 2 weeks, and away we go. The second week, it was like, all right, listen to more media and talk show hosts and stuff like that. It's like, all right, this is serious. I still think we'll be back to work. I think in certain areas, I think the country will open up accordingly to, maybe the severity of the cases that they have. I could see Utah opening up May 1st. And maybe according to the counties, Salt Lake County may wait a little longer. But the tricky part that I'm seeing is kind of financing, with jumbo financing kind of going away with Utah Housing, and some particular mortgages or brokerages are getting some pushback on lending with Utah Housing.
Didn't Chase Bank come out last night and say they raised their minimum credit score to 700 and now you need 20% down to qualify, or some thing like that?
Yeah, so most lending institutions have not, it used to be like a 580, 620 credit score to be able to lend. Most of them have gone to 680. It wouldn't shock me to see Chase, going up to 700. Um, it, I think you're going to see a little bit, I think most institutions are going to be more stringent on the type of financing and the lending that they do, and making sure that things go well. I think the fallout yet is still unknown. I think trying to guess that every week that I think this goes by, I think the more serious it gets for our economy, or things may slow down. I know when I speak to most real estate agents in the last 2 weeks, they've been feeling, things aren't going under contract, or houses are sitting. Title companies have been extremely busy, just still due to refinances.
Right.
So there's different aspects of the business of this real estate community that are doing better than others. I think if we could get back to, I think we'll still have a good summer. I think once we get some good weather going on, people back to work, I think we should have, I think we could have, I think it's going to slow it up. One thing, let me share one other thing too, Josh, is some people are hurting out of this economy. And some are doing better. What I mean by that is I went mountain biking with a friend the other day, and in talking with him, he was like, oh, how are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm doing better than ever. My wife, who, works a couple jobs as a trainer, now turns around, is getting $200 unemployment, now $600 a week on top of that. So now she's making $800 a week when maybe she was making $400 a week. And now, so her income's doubled due to the stimulus package. So, he's out there going out to dinner, and, Easter was spent a little bit more on Easter than what he probably would have done, so I think in certain cases, you're seeing some people they're doing better out of this situation, and may not even be taking it, or feeling any of the lumps of it. I think there's going to have to be some concessions in financing, meaning if you had a regular job and all of a sudden they go to pull unemployment, and all of a sudden, hey, I was laid off for the last two months due to COVID-19. I don't know what they're going to do in that. There's going to have to probably be some leniency, with
Right.
such a high population not working.
If it's even not the credit bureaus saying we're not going to count this credit, not even count the late payments or the missed payments or anything that happened during those. But something you and I have talked about, the difference in now in 2008 is now people have a lot of equity in their houses. I think you were giving me
Yeah. 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 I listened to a podcast the other day, and I think two different things. I mentioned earlier in this that, you'd work with a buyer at 500,000, and then they were trying to get qualified up to 600,000. I think since that has happened, it seems like when working with a buyer that wants to, qualified for 500,000, it seems like then they were now and recently in the last years been looking at 400,000, or they've been very savvy. Instead of doing no money down financing, most of these guys have 3.5%, 5% down in their purchase power. And I think second, as long as you had bought in the last 2-3 years, even 4 years, most people I'm working with come out of a house with $100,000, even though they bought it 2-3 years ago. So there's a ton of money in it, and most people I'm seeing aren't pulling that money out. So the difference is 2004 to 2008, roughly, you had everybody living on their houses and their line of credits and stuff. And I'm not seeing that. The people I'm working with, when we close their house, they have a ton of money, and, they're in a good position. So
if lending does change and they follow with this 20% down demand and lending changes that much, in my mind, I think it might step back a lot until the late 70s. As an investor, this is what I've been foreseeing for years coming. And I might be right, I might be wrong, but what I've been foreseeing is that there's going to be the necessity or the desire in the market for seller financing or for some seller carryback. So when I start seeing the 20% down, in my mind, as an owner of properties that have a lot of equity in them, because I changed the way that I bought a lot of my investments. Now I'm thinking if I can put that home on the market and sell it, I can carry back hopefully that 20%, create my own second mortgage at 20%. And if it works out this way, the buyer might be able to benefit as well, because now they won't have to be paying the PMI, the mortgage insurance, because they'll owe less than 80% on the mortgage. So if I carry back 20-25%, I might have a second mortgage, 20-25% at a slightly higher interest rate. And as an investor, notes are really attractive to me because I don't have to do anything on them. They simply record and I cash my check. If I don't get the money, I can foreclose. and take back over an equitable position or force the hand of the sell. So I'm looking at it in two different ways. When I flip houses or have rental properties, there's a lot of equity in those properties so that I can buy those with the seller carryback. And then I can also sell those properties with the seller back and carry a note position. And the notes back in the 70s were big. You could sell your note, you could liquefy it, sell it back to the owner at discount. It's attractive to me looking at the equity that are in these properties, both that I own and that I'm looking at buying, but there has to be some depression to buy it at a discount. It was almost getting to the point where flipping wasn't worth it for me because I was buying it at 10% margin. And that's what I hope, is that margin spreads out a little bit more. But I don't know if you guys there in Utah, some markets I think are going to be heavier hit. New York, Hawaii, some of these tourist areas. I was talking to a girl yesterday. She's down in Arizona, and 70% of her business comes between February and May, when all of the snowbirds are coming down and buying the properties through there. She says that she can't recover from this. She's sunk because the rest of the year she lived on what she's missing right now in the marketplace. And that's hard, I think. Do you see the seasonality there, or do you see it hurt, or how do you see us coming out of this? One of the things that I always like to look at the collapses, the market collapses, let me phrase this a little bit better, and maybe you can answer it better, is whenever there's a tank, whenever the market depresses, whenever there's tragedy, but on the other side of it, there's a lot of opportunity. And you and I both know Matt. He came out smelling better, I think, out of the collapse because he got a lot of better deals. And I refer to him a lot, telling me before the collapse to pump my brakes, and me not listening to him. And then when it was coming back, going, now I get it. Now I remember why he was telling me to pump my brakes. Now I'm looking at this, and for the 2 years before this, I've been telling a lot of people, pump your brakes. The margins aren't there. Now is the time, if you're liquid and have good credit, where you can be buying up a lot of opportunity. Where do you maybe see that opportunity?
Well, I think in situations like this, I think people have equity in their houses, and I think panic. I think a lot of people then are all of a sudden, people are selling out of fear, or they're buying out of pleasure. It's kind of one of those situations. So I think you'll have a few people that are fear-based, just going, get me out of this house. The pain of making another mortgage payment. I have $100,000 of equity in my house. The difference between making 100,000 and 80,000, it's still good money. It's more than what a lot of people have ever had. So I think you'll have a lot of people just in just going, just get me out of the situation and make it happen quickly. I think there's a good way for investments, if you're dealing with investors on that side. I think, and I think it's kind of trying to, on the investor side, it's just trying to control your emotions. This isn't really the end of the world. I mean, who knows what will happen in the future and how fast or how far this will go. But I mean, there's still somebody looking to buy, and there's still somebody looking to sell today if you find the right property. But yeah, I think in Utah overall, I mean, we still have a ton of people moving to the state. We have a lot of big contractors, Google, Amazon, all of these different big tech companies that are moving here. And so we just have just a ton of people moving in. And so I think that's really going to help us out. We also have in the state, we have a lot of people that have kids, and when they go off to college, they tend to move back.
Right.
And so, I mean, I think the big thing right now is just affordable housing is kind of tricky for the starter homes. I think there's a lot of homes in the $400,000 to $500,000, maybe $400,000 to $600,000 that may get pushed down because of this, and with financing. Jumbo loans are going to hurt the upper end a little bit. I mean, they're still out there. I think you just got to know where to get them.
And what I've been thinking, where I'm spending a lot of my time focusing right now on real estate, is I'm looking at the businesses that are folding up. A lot of these really small businesses that relied on weekly cash flow to survive. They're not they don't have money sitting around where they can sustain a month of no income. So a lot of these small businesses that just need the $3,000 a week to pay their bills, pay their mortgage, basically owning their own job. They're folding like lawn chairs over here in Hawaii. And I know there's a bike shop in Ogden that closed down. There's a lot of these small businesses. I'm looking at their buildings that they're going to be losing, or the landlords are going to have vacant and possibly selling. And in conjunction with affordable housing, a lot of these mixed use buildings where you can take these brick and mortars downtown Ogden, downtown any city, it doesn't have to be Ogden, it could be New York, it could be Florida, it could be Hawaii, but these ones that are downtown, the bottom could remain retail and building up the other levels to be mixed use buildings that are much more affordable, don't need to have cars, really seems to play to that generation that's coming up behind them. Where I think that there's a lot of opportunity in changing, converting some of that real estate over into more affordable, smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the cities are pushing your direction the same way that you're thinking too. I know I was speaking to a member of a city council member for a local city here, and he turned around and he just says that the state's coming to these individual cities and just saying, you need to start providing affordable housing. If you don't, we will. And so what had happened in that conversation is now all of a sudden the cities where they weren't allowing multifamily or high density properties, now all of a sudden they've been very lenient on what they approve. In fact, they've kind of gone the opposite direction. You know, if somebody was going to allow you 14 doors per acre, you know, as previously, or that's what the developer could get on the ground, the city's trying to get you to put 20 on there somehow. So they've gone from, instead of trying to push the number of units down, to now they're trying to push them up. So I think exactly with what you're saying, I think properties like that are going to be very favorable with the city right now. They were talking about doing Section 8 housing. The state is, you know, if the cities didn't enforce it, the state was going to do it. So you have some cities in Utah that are very motivated right now to comply with that, because the last thing they want is a state telling them what to do in their city.
Right.
But I think it's just making shifts and adapting to this market, being kind of nimble on your feet on, you know, where one industry is not doing well, another one will be. You know, I'm a little concerned about the apartment ground, you know, or these apartments that we have them going up everywhere in Utah. I think I heard one statistic, I think it was from Ben Shapiro, that said that a third of renters haven't made their payment in April. And that was around the 10th, which maybe they're going to be late, but it's still a third of the United States, if they're a renter, hadn't made their April payment.
Well, when the government comes out and says, hey, you can defer this and push it off, and almost mandating, and a lot of people, a lot of governors and mayors and state, they're all coming out and saying, hey, we'll defer this payment, or you can't be foreclosed on, you can't be evicted for the next, until whenever this stay-at-home order and everything is lifted. So now you have tenants that aren't paying, mortgage companies that aren't requiring it, but that's not getting forgiven, right? And it's not even being pushed to the end of the mortgage. It's just being pushed until the date when they say, okay, now it's all due. And so May, June, July, whenever they say, okay, we're now requiring you to pay your mortgage or your rent, now you don't owe 1 month, you owe 3, 4, 6 months.
Yeah.
I can't seem to think that there won't be. The banks might work with people. They might say, okay, we'll push this to the back, but I can't see there not being some surge of inventory at that point. 120 days, 6 months, whatever the foreclosure process is in your particular state, I can't see there not being a push of inventory, and hopefully not to the level that causes a collapse, but there's going to have to be a push of some sort of inventory by that point to pick up more.
Yeah, agreed. And I've seen, again, kind of multiple facets of this. I had one gentleman that I was speaking to that, you know, he was talking about, I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday that I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, our $2 million just hit our bank account today. I was like,
so he got
what?
the loan.
He had $2 million. I don't know if he got a loan. I know he had employees that he had, you know, I think he was down to a third of his staff, but I mean, I think it was at a 0.5% interest rate. So I think there's a couple good reasons, you know, people, some are lending. I have another friend that had 400,000 that he had applied for. Now, who knows when it will show up, but I spoke with a gentleman today that lives in my neighborhood that has all types of funding from the state. He's like, from the federal government, that he's like, there's so much money coming down, we don't even know how to use it all, or how to allocate it at this point in time. So some of it, again, like when I mentioned being nimble, is just looking for other ways to you know, reskin the cat, I guess, so to speak, where he was talking about just the state of Utah has now received their money, but they don't know, you know,
Don't know who to
where
give it
start
to.
channeling. Yeah, exactly. And he said this, the scope of what they have is very broad. So they're even like, hey, what criteria to meet? And some of it was just wide open. What do I need it
Yeah,
to fit?
and that's there are two loans right now that I know that people can apply for that have small businesses. There's the EIDL loan,
Hmm.
the emergency fund, and they opened that up, and they even have a $10,000 grant that supposedly is supposed to happen within a week of applying for it. You're supposed to have $10,000, which goes towards that loan. It's assuming you're going to get a greater loan, so they're
Hmm.
granting 10 grand before you get your loan. And then there's the payroll protection, which if you give 75% of that as payroll to your employees, you don't even have to pay it back. So I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of money. I'm going to bring a guy on. His name's Andy. He's an attorney in Texas, and that's where he's moved his business to. Well, there's this lull in his business. He started processing some of these mortgages, and that's something that anybody who's listening to this wants to know. If you're an attorney or know an attorney, they can process these loans for the SBA and get paid a percent for doing it. So that's where some of the attorneys that are nimble and have been proactive, they're processing these loans, and that's where they're making their money right now is on the lending end. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so if he got one of those loans, he might not even have to pay it back.
Yeah, I'm really curious. He's going to provide me some information. It wasn't even just loans, it was grants, it was all types of different things. Some that needed to be paid back at a low interest rate, some were just grants, and it was just development and redevelopment and building. And I said, well, what criteria do you need to make? And he says the scope is so broad that, I mean, it's almost just submit it and they may just give it to you. So, I mean, just kind of different ways and different programs that you could look at, you know.
How do we pay all this back though? I mean, sooner or later the government's going to need some of this back. Are they going to make a real estate tax in Utah now? Is there going to be a transfer tax, higher sales tax, property
Uh,
taxes? Like, we've got to pay that back. That's the other problem is you, me, and him and everybody else are going to have to somehow cover that $2 million loan that he just
yeah,
got. So
yeah,
it's kind of
yeah.
scary, which I don't see us ever having hyperinflation, but if we do, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. You know, we've been printing money and we have a high debt. I mean, what our GDP is, what, $22 trillion a year, and now all of a sudden we just printed off 2 trillion in the last 30 days.
Right.
So that's a little scary. I don't know where that goes, or what that looks like. I know every other country's doing it, so we're not alone in it.
Let's assume that this market does, and this is what I really wanted to get out of you. Let's assume this market crashes. Like a lot of people are predicting that we go into that Great Depression. Out of the Great Depression came some of the highest transfers of wealth. So it's not the end of the world. And that's what I remember a line from the Great Short. I watched that movie and really enjoyed it. And when the market was tanking and his buddies, I can't remember his name, when they gathered around and were almost celebrating, he said one thing that stuck out to me is he said, and I'm going to paraphrase it so more close to what they said on the video, there are people losing their livelihoods, going to commit suicide, losing their lives over this. It's not a time to celebrate. Yes, he was going to be rich, but it wasn't a time to celebrate. And it stuck in my mind for one of two ways. I look at market collapses differently because now I look at them as a potential opportunity, but in my opportunity that I'll have is somebody's tragedy. So I have to be really empathetic of their tragedy, but at the same time understanding that there's some growth that can happen here and some ways for the lower class to not be lower class anymore and invest in the right thing, just a few dollars and they can explode, start the right business. There's opportunity in this. But something, when I was talking to you the other day, you were talking about grit and resilience and how that's one of the things. Expand on that a little bit more about how grit and resilience you believe can help those people grow to be in that next.
Yeah, it's a book that I'm actually reading about grit. That's the name of the title of it, and it's just interesting as you look through, and sometimes you look through the way society is, and you go to school, get a 4-year degree, and some people really do well at memorizing, you know, or hey, I read a book and I can retain a high percentage of what I read, and so I can test well on it. Others may not test well on it and may not do well academically. And because they may not have done so well academically, maybe they had to fight a little harder in other aspects of their life or develop different ways to cope with what they're dealing with. I think a lot of times you look through different worlds or different things that were, as you look around even the room that you're in, you know, from the light bulb to the doors, there's somebody that's a multi-millionaire in that industry. And so I think money's out there. I think the grit is just going, how hard am I going to work to get there? Some of the most talented people I know may not make that much money just due to they've had a lot of things come easy to them. They're very intelligent, but very lazy.
Yeah.
You see some others that may not have the highest IQ, but are going to work you right into the dirt. And just with a little creativity, they'll do phenomenal in the industry. I'm sure you've met plenty of people where it's like, how is this guy worth millions of dollars? And you talk to him, it's like, this guy's nothing special. In fact, it makes me feel dumb that, you know, I'm talking to this guy and, you know, not very bright, and all of a sudden he's worth 10 times what I am. And it's like, what did I do wrong? You know, what am I missing? But you have grit and opportunity and just a never give up attitude. Maybe one thing too, to touch alongside of that, Josh, is I remember you and I, we made really good money from, you know, 04 to 08, you know, during those years. But I have some other friends from 08 to 2014 that made a killing.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
you know, they made more money in that downturn than you and I did in the upturn. And it was
Right.
just being positioned in the right place, not scared, you know, and to take risks at that point in time. And so I that's kind of, you know, if we do have a turn, it's kind of the challenge that I have in my own head of going, all right, how do I, you know, this is what I've done in the past. How do I make it even better in this downturn? How do I shift? Because there is a lot more money, I think, in a downturn than there is an upturn, especially in flipping homes. Your margins get bigger.
They get huge. And it's, I remember there's a property on 40th Street. You sold it to me. I think that you owned that property before you sold it to me. I bought that property. I can't remember what I bought it for you for, but I remember I pulled out over $100,000 in it, right? So I was leveraged 110, 120, 125. I short sold that property. It was one of the last to go. It was almost the last property that I short sold. When I showed up at the title company and I sold that property for $22,000. And I'm looking at that going, somebody bought that for less than a fifth, like a sixth of what I bought it for. And now if I drive by there, it's an apartment complex.
Yeah.
Somebody made hundreds of thousands of dollars off of my loss. And when I was sitting there at the closing table going, I have no other options, thinking, how could I keep this property? There was no way. But looking across the table going, this guy's killing it. He's going to make so much money on this property. All he had to wait. And I look at Ogden and I wish I would have never sold a property. Now they're all worth 2, 3, 4, 5 times what I had bought them for. I say that, but it got me to where I am now, selling them and getting the experiences. But that's what I'm looking at is in this collapse, the people that have the resilience and the grit and the drive that don't sit home and just watch Netflix all day long and slump into a depression. The guys that are out there looking for the opportunity, putting in their time out there on the streets, looking to talk to people. We're in an information age where nobody shouldn't have the information. Everybody has the same access. It's those people that are really driven, that are not waiting for this to fix for them. They're out there fixing it. Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, they were all born out of the last collapse. Maybe not Airbnb, but I know Uber was. They were born out of the last collapse. And that's what I'm looking at is where's the opportunity here for the next guy? Do you have any insight or
where it would go? I think in the inside, that's a good question. I'll think about that just for 1 second. You know, I think one of the things that helps you in a slow economy is you have more properties to look at. It seems like, right, if you were to go back 6 months and just go in Utah, how many investment properties are you seeing?
right?
You know, you may come across, none, or you may see maybe 1 or 2 come across your desk with no money in them.
Mine was a pocket deal. That's the only one I got it is because and if I hadn't, you and Devin Hubbard.
Yeah. And so with that, now you turn around and it's just like, you know, in a slower economy, it's all of a sudden you can be very selective on the properties that you take. Hey, here's 10 that I saw today. You know, if I pass on all 10, it's not a big deal. I'll see 10 more tomorrow. And
but money money in 2012 when I was flipping houses or 11, money was 6 points, 8 points, 18. It was really expensive money. And it seems like as margins get smaller, money gets cheaper. So that's what I've done in my own is I want to have high credit and high liquidity now, because that's where I think a lot of the money is at, is when you do find one of those deals, not giving up 8%, 8 points and 18% to somebody, you're giving up none because it's all yours, or you're giving up 1 and 12. And now where you're leveraged into liquidity, those opportunities are ripe for somebody if they have high credit and high net worth, or know
Right. Yeah.
somebody,
And it looks,
have personal
yeah.
connections.
And it is a good time to develop relationships right now. I mean, before, maybe we're still in the middle of this, I think it's a good time to start looking for money. Hey, who's willing to lend and what does it look like? Because you still have some optimistic people out there. And, after you do a couple properties and people feel good with the quality of work, and hey, they did what they said they were going to do and repaid when they said they were going to repay, a lot of trust can be earned out of that.
I'll put your email in the comments of this so that people can email you if they're looking for money in Utah, or looking for deals, or have anything to bring, or just looking for a good agent that wants to represent them.
That'd be great.
Where I'm looking right now, and I'll just give this and then we can say our farewells, but where I'm looking right now is these businesses that are folding. That's where I'm finding a lot of opportunity, is buying businesses that are folding up and being able to survive however long this lasts. And then when I open the doors, it's going to be a lot less crowded industry. And so I'm looking at, there's over in Kona here in Hawaii, all these surfboard shops, the rental shops, all of those, they're struggling right now because nobody's renting their surfboards or their bikes, and they're not essential. And so a lot of them are closed, but their rent is still due. They're still needing to pay certain bills. So I'm looking at a Polaris Slingshot right now, a company that rents Polaris Slingshots with their little parking spaces. And over in Kona, I've got these cars that I rent, the car Vs that I rent. So I'm looking at these Slingshots in that little booth that he's selling with the parking lot. And I can get it dirt cheap right now. It benefits my other business, but it also expands my rental car businesses into a different kind of rental car. And then right next door are some surfboards and beach gear that I could also rent out, a surf shop that I could rent out. So it might really benefit me now, where I have a whole chunk of dirt over in Kona with multiple different things that I can rent out. It almost gives me the ability to corner the market, because as somebody's losing it, I can benefit from there. And those guys are willing to sell or finance to me right now. They just need some money coming in to pay for their house and whatever else, that they're okay with me just giving them a few $1,000s a month and getting what I feel is a killer deal, because they're desperate.
Yeah. And a lot of people, most people aren't leveraged to weather this storm. This is one where I think you'll have a lot of businesses that were on the edge going out. But I think if the entrepreneurial spirit of this country is, they always find a way to open another company or maybe open the doors with a better business plan this time. And that's the great thing about this country, and different ways to move around and in this industry.
Yeah. Cool. Chad, anything you want to tell people? Anything that you think that you can leave people with that will help them out if this does go either direction?
It's a good time. It's always a good time to develop your skills and learn and invest in yourself. When I started in the real estate, I spent a lot of money in coaching and developing and reading books and doing different things. I think it's a good time to look at your budgets, as you go through this time, and as times start getting lean, possibly, that you start looking at a budget and how am I spending my time and my money, and where does my money go? No better time to do that right now. And then maybe implement it here forward, going, this is how my money, this is how I'm going to break up my money and how I spend my money, and what am I saving? Where am I reinvesting? And so forth. So I think knowledge and looking at budgets really carefully, and, trim the fat right now. It's a good time to trim the fat. And even if the market comes back really strong, I mean, you make money in the margins, right? The lower your monthly outgo compared to your income, if in a good economy, you should put some money away. In a slow economy, it's, you can weather a storm a lot longer with little or no money going out. And and then always reinvesting in yourself. I mean, education, knowledge. And then I think maybe third is just networking with one another. It's amazing on who you can talk to, just calling this one individual out of the blue today, that I know him and I talked to him, but I'd never thought of him as he acquires contracts for state and federal contracts, reaching out to him and just say, hey, what do you have in the real estate world? There's so many different places as an agent that you can reach out to. I've had really good luck this last 2 years with working with attorneys and just networking with different attorneys and adding value to things that they're already doing. So I think it's a great way to start as we're going through maybe a slow time to reevaluate where's some places that I can make money in the margins and add value to other companies and to individuals around you.
The last 3 minutes of this podcast is worth somebody listening to the whole thing. That's brilliant. You're getting your broker's license right now. I mean, that's you're kind of.
Yeah. I've owned my own brokerage for about 18 years, and for some reason it's about time to get my broker's license. So right now I've been, taking broker classes and just doing my education to go along forward with that. So it's as good a time as any to do it. I haven't ever seen a value in getting it. You don't make any more money being a broker. It's not any money owning in a brokerage even. So, but it's a good time to reevaluate. There's things that I've forgotten that I should know. So it's been a great experience even looking at that. Trying to get back on reading a book a week, and just looking through different things and educating on that. So
cool. Thanks, Chad. Yeah, that's the thing is everybody else has time on their hands right now too. So there's no time like
yeah,
to all of those as well. So
yeah, definitely.
Cool, man. Well, I've got a slow day today because it's raining like hell here in Hawaii. So I'm not going diving or surfing or anything else. I'll just
another rough day in Hawaii, huh? I wish all of us could live that way, right?
Man, you see me with a hoodie on, right? It's like probably 64 degrees out here, but it's raining, and so I'm freezing. I've all of a sudden become a pansy in the weather after I've been here for a year.
Yeah, I think it's 42 degrees here. So I mean,
I'm wearing tank tops and flip flops.
Yeah, exactly.
Warm day for you guys coming out spring.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, Chad. Sounds great, man. Well, thanks. I don't want to keep everybody too much longer so that it's palatable, but yeah, I appreciate it. A lot of value. I'm going to put your contact information. I'll leave your phone number out. I'll just put your email address.
Yeah, please.
I'll just put your email address down there. Anybody can hit you up for whatever they need.
Okay, great. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad.
Right.
See you, man.
We'll see you. All right, bye.